Hi, everybody. Welcome back to CELPIP Live. How is everybody doing? If you're new here or if you've been watching us for a while, let us know where you're joining from. Let me know in the comments below. Me myself, I'm streaming from Vancouver. Eager to know where you're joining from, so let me know in the comments. Let's jump right into our trivia question for today. Which Canadian favorite sport is played on ice with brooms? Which Canadian favorite sport is played on ice with brooms? Please let me know in the comments below. And if your answer is correct, I will share it on our screen towards the end of our segment. I would encourage you not to Google or chat GPT the answer, because I'm sure you already know. Just think about it for a sec. Anyway, let's get on to our show. So if you're new here, CELPIP Live is an interactive series made to help CELPIP test takers like you understand a little bit more about the CELPIP test. So if you're preparing for the test, I would encourage you to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to be notified the next time we go live. In today's episode, we are very excited to have Kiera from Prof Prep join us. Some of you may already know her through her videos and language tips on Instagram and YouTube. She will be sharing strategies today on test performance and how confidence can really make all the difference. So let's go welcome her to our show.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Ashwati. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kiera, and I am a test prep coach living in Vancouver, and I have helped students pass the test for over a decade now, and it's my absolute pleasure to be here with you talking about confidence for the CELPIP test.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kiera. As I already mentioned, I'm sure a lot of our viewers are looking forward to this session as they may be familiar with your work already. So I'm going to let you get started. And I will step down, but I'm here to support you with anything that you might need during your presentation.
I'm sorry, Ashwati, I can't hear you.
Oh.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so I will just continue then. Again, today we are going to be talking about confidence. So, what is confidence? Well, confidence, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is a belief in your own ability to do things and be successful. So, why does confidence matter for the CELPIP test? Well, it affects how you think, how you manage time, and how you perform under pressure. My student, Lysandra, as you can see here, went from a 7 to a 10 on the CELPIP test by having new confidence in the strategies that she was using. My student, Mangladep, went from 8 to 10 on the reading test, again with newfound confidence in her strategies. My student Ozge was stuck at 8 for speaking and writing over and over and over again. But with some newfound confidence, she was finally able to get the score that she needed. And just last week, she was invited, and now she is a permanent resident of Canada. Same with my student Vishwas. With confidence, he was able to get a 12 on the speaking test. So confidence is incredibly important when it comes to reaching your goals on test day. However, one thing I wanted to speak about is over versus under confidence. Overestimating and underestimating your abilities can be equally problematic. So it's important to understand whether you're over or underconfident. Signs of overconfidence. Maybe you skip practice because you think you already know it. Or when you practice, you're practicing those same tests over and over again. Or maybe you're surprised and upset when your score is lower than expected. Maybe you think it's some conspiracy and CELPIP wants you to fail. The problem is this results in answering questions too quickly, not checking your work, and of course, getting surprised by difficulty or the difficult questions. Signs of underconfidence: you study a lot, but you still think you're not ready. You focus more on what could go wrong than on what you've already improved. The problem with this is on test day, you're hesitating and running out of time. Maybe you're changing your answers. And you know, when you practice, you probably often do this, changing from the correct one to the wrong one because you don't trust yourself enough. And lastly, freezing from stress. So, what is stress? Stress is this normal biological reaction, but our responses can be different. This here is what we call flight, fight, and freeze. Flight, this is when you want to run away because you're so stressed. Maybe you have gotten so stressed out that you leave during the listening test. I've heard of this happening before. I can't do it, and you leave the test center. Fight. This is when you get really angry and upset, and maybe during the test you're speaking way too quickly because you're so stressed out and nervous. But worst of all is freeze. This is when your brain can just shut off. For some students, it's just like they feel like everything goes blank and they literally can't think. I have seen this firsthand when students freeze during the test. But don't worry, there are things that you can do to overcome this type of stress. So sometimes stress can be helpful. And the physiological symptoms of stress are the same as those for thrill, pleasure, or excitement. So in our body, it feels the exact same. And good stress can inspire you and motivate you and help you focus your energy and improve performance. So helpful stress improves oxygen flow to the brain and increases attention and determination. But when we have too much of it, this unhelpful stress, it can result in poor concentration, reduced working memory, and sometimes in very severe cases, sickness. So what causes lack of confidence? Well, first of all, poor preparation. Somebody who prepares well is always going to feel much more confident than someone who doesn't. Also, there's a fear of failure. CELPIP for many of you is very high stakes. You know, maybe it'll decide whether or not you're able to immigrate to Canada or whether or not you're going to get certified in your career. So many people who take the CELPIP test are taking it for a very serious reason. Also, there's the negative self-talk. So sometimes we are not so kind to ourselves. Maybe we say, your English isn't good, or you're not good at reading, or you're a slow reader, and telling ourselves these really unhelpful negative things that cause us to lose even more confidence. Something else that's unhelpful is comparing ourselves to others. Maybe our friend got the score that we needed, or our classmate, and now we feel less confident. But don't compare yourself to somebody else's success in a negative way. Use that as motivation for what you can also achieve. And lastly, many studies have shown that a perceived lack of control causes a lack of confidence. So yes, of course, on test day, there are many things that you can't control. First of all, the behavior of other test takers. Maybe somebody's sitting there and they keep clicking their pen, or maybe they keep tapping their leg. Whatever they're doing, you have no control over that. So you just have to let it happen and move on. Same with the noise levels during the test. It can be surprisingly loud, right? When other people are doing the speaking test behind you. And of course, this can feel distracting, but you have no control over this. So again, just move on and overcome it. You have no control over the questions asked in each test. Of course, it is a test. So this, again, is why we want to prepare well so that we feel confident no matter what question is asked to us on test day. And lastly, you have no control over how well you did on the last test. And like I showed you with my student, Lysandra, she went from 7 to 10, right? So your score or your performance on the last test, this has nothing to do with your performance on the next one. You can do really well, even if you didn't do so well before. So just get over it, let it go. And remember that there's so much more that you can control. So test time and location. I know some of you may live in rural areas and maybe you have to travel to take the test. Okay, you can't control that. But you can control which test center you go to. Maybe you had a bad experience at one. Next time, go to a different test center. And the test time. So maybe you're somebody who is an early bird, you're a morning person, and you perform better during the day. Take your test in the morning. Or maybe you are a night owl. You're someone who performs better in the evening. Therefore, you should take your test at night. But something I never suggest doing is taking your test after work. You will have already had a very long, stressful day, and then adding the CELPIP test on top of that is a recipe for disaster. So make sure you're doing it on one of your days off, or you're taking a day off. Also, you can control how much you prepare. Like I said before, someone who has prepared well will always feel much more confident than someone who hasn't. Also, how you spend your time preparing and which materials you use to prepare. Your supportive relationships, your mindset towards the test, what you eat and drink. Maybe coffee makes you really anxious. Skip coffee on test day. How much sleep you get. Studies show that sleep has a major effect on your test performance. So students who get a good rest before a test outperform students who haven't by almost 100%. So please get a good sleep before you take the test. Do not stay up all night studying before test day. Also, how much exercise you do. Personally, I know I feel in a much better place if I go out and I go for a long walk in the morning. Maybe this is something that could also help you on test day. And lastly, whether or not you learn to manage your stress. So I'm going to show you some different strategies on how to do that. But we are all different, so there's no one size fits all for all of us, and this may be something that you have to work on as well. So if you're not sure whether you are overconfident or underconfident, there's a quick test that you can do. So as you're practicing, predict your score honestly. So maybe it's reading part 1, where there are 11 questions. You can predict how many questions you got correct out of 11. So maybe, like my student here, you write down 6. Okay, I got 6 questions correct. And then you're going to check your real score. If your prediction, let's say you predicted 6, but you only got 2 correct, well, this means you're overconfident, right? Your real ability is not as high as what you think your ability is. However, if you're like my student here and you predict 6, but you actually got 9 correct, well, this means you're underconfident. So your real ability is higher than what you think it is. And this is important to know because the changes you have to make moving forward will be different depending on whether you're under or overconfident. So if you're overconfident, you should do real practice tasks under real timing. So don't keep using the same 2 tests from the CELPIP website, right? You're going to have to invest maybe in some more practice tests to really gauge your real ability. Then what you should do is ask for outside feedback. Somebody to tell you you're doing this correctly, but this needs to improve. I always suggest, and I'm going to teach you how to do this shortly, analyzing and tracking your mistakes. So again, you can adapt your strategies towards that on how to improve to get to your goal. And lastly, practice humility. It's okay to have to improve to get to where you need to be on test day. But if you already think you know everything, how are you going to learn? So here we have some sources of real confidence, which are really good. And we have some sources of fake confidence, which are really bad. So what do you guys think? Do you think that working on improving your English every day, is this a source of real confidence or is it a source of fake confidence? Please let me know what you think in the comments.
Kiera, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. I will share the comments as they come.
Okay.
But it does take like a 10-20 second delay because it's streaming and it's on YouTube. But yeah, I'm excited for this exercise.
Okay, awesome. So working on improving your English every day, maybe that means if you struggle with the reading test, what I have my students do is read 5 to 10 minutes before bedtime every night. They're practicing reading, but most importantly, they're practicing reading with something that is their level. You can't just always be practicing with CELPIP practice tests because this is far too challenging. And beyond that, it's going to be unenjoyable. So please, when you're practicing on working on improving your English, also use sources that you enjoy, books that you find interesting, listen to news or the radio that you also find interesting. Overestimating ability, this is a source of fake confidence. So like what we just spoke about before, if you're overestimating your ability, what's going to happen is when you get your results back, they're going to be much lower than expected, and it's going to cause you a lot of stress. So please, it's important that you really understand what you're capable of and don't set your expectations too high on test day. Practicing under test pressure, this is a source of real confidence. So what this means is setting the timer while you're practicing, so you know how much time and what you can complete in that amount of time. You're not always going to do this, but once in a while, it will really help you improve your confidence and prepare you for test day. Using big fancy words. So, a lot of students think this makes them sound advanced or more intelligent, but the truth is, it sounds unnatural. And students often use these words incorrectly and they slow down your speech. So, what CELPIP values is clear, natural English. So, if the word doesn't fit well, it will lower your score. And the same goes for memorizing long linking expressions. Phrases like, in light of the aforementioned issue, maybe sound impressive, but they don't show real control of the language. If the topic changes or you forget part of the memorized piece, you're going to panic. And real confidence comes from being able to adapt, not recall a script. And again, they sound very unnatural. Next, using templates. This is fake confidence. Believe it or not, in one day, I had 2 students use the exact same template. So I'm just a coach with a handful of students at a time. Imagine the test rater who's getting tests every single day. If you're using that same template, it will be flagged. I understand that they can feel safe, but they actually stop you from thinking in English. And the moment the task doesn't match the template perfectly, you get stuck. Also, examiners can tell when the structure is memorized. And again, it lowers your coherence score. I had a student who came to me last week and all of his scores were around 7, 8, except for speaking, he had a 5. But as I was speaking to him, I could tell, wait, actually, your English is quite good, much higher than the 5 you were given. So I asked him, hey, did you use speaking templates on test day? He said, yes, I did. How did you know? I said, well, it's because your result on the test is much lower than your ability, which indicates to me that you were doing something majorly wrong. And in his case, was using templates. They almost always lower your score. So please avoid them on test day. Using step-by-step strategies, this is what you need to do. And what strategy may work for one student may not be the strategy that works for you. So this is something that you may have to adjust with time. Relying on ChatGPT and sample answers for ideas is a big no-no. So reading good answers can help you understand what good communication looks like. But if you rely on these for practice, you don't develop your own ideas, you don't practice thinking quickly, and your real-time performance comes weaker. On test day, you won't have someone feeding you ideas, so the confidence doesn't actually last. And they've done studies on students, university students who use ChatGPT and who don't. And as you can see, our brain, when we're studying and preparing, will work much better when we're not using ChatGPT. So please try to avoid ChatGPT during your preparation. You do not have it on test day, and you need to build those real critical thinking skills on your own. Also, practicing on AI websites. The problem with this is they give you unrealistic scores because they're not real CELPIP, right? The AI isn't trained by CELPIP. So what's going to happen is they're either going to give you scores much lower or much higher than what they should be. This can feel motivating at first, but it hides your real weaknesses. You don't actually know what you're doing wrong. So please avoid them. Also, what you should do is focus on ideas rather than grammar while speaking. If you focus too much on grammar, then your brain is going to become overwhelmed with so much going on. What the test raters want is they want clear answers with good ideas. Worrying about grammar is not going to be helpful for you on test day. Another thing I want you to avoid is booking the test multiple times in a row. I don't know why students do this. I had a student once book 5 tests in a row, 2 days after 2 days after 2 days. No, please prepare to take the test just one time. And if worst comes to worst, okay, you can book the test again after that. But trying to take it 5 times and hoping that you'll get lucky on one of them, this is not good preparation. Instead, actually spend the time to prepare, learn the right strategies, understand the test, and then you don't have to hope and pray that on one of these tests you can get it. Lastly, I want you to analyze your mistakes. So this is a source of real confidence. Again, once you understand what you're doing wrong, you can fix it and adjust and start doing it correctly in the future. Okay, so you guys, please ask me any questions you may have. Now, I want to talk about the 4 A's. So, number 1, acknowledge. So notice what's happening and be honest about your strengths, weaknesses, and emotional reactions. Analyze. Figure out why it's happening. Look at patterns. Are you making the same kinds of mistakes over and over again? Look at habits. Maybe when you're practicing or preparing for the test, you've got the television on in the background and you're getting distracted, or you keep looking at your phone. Or triggers. Is there something that happens that brings out this stress response where you either freeze? Knowing these things, again, is what's going to help you adjust. So adjusting, these are the small changes that help us improve. I suggest just one new strategy at a time, and then you advance. You move forward, you test your new approach, and you keep what works and you repeat the cycle. So every time, maybe you're making just one small adjustment until you are getting the score you need for test day. So most of my students, I would say 9 out of 10 of my students struggle with CELPIP reading. And there's numerous reasons for that, mostly because it's a different world. We don't read long texts as frequently as we did in the past, right? So what I would like you to do after you get the score, the acknowledge is I'm not getting the score I need on the CELPIP reading test. Then, as you analyze the mistakes, you're going to ask yourself some questions. Did you lose marks because you ran out of time or you had to rush? Were there any vocabulary problems, like key words that you didn't understand? Did any of your mistakes surprise you? In other words, were there any answers that turned out to be wrong, even though you were very confident that they were right? The aim of these questions is to diagnose whether your reading problems are related to time, understanding vocabulary, or confusion between answers. And it's important that we know this because, again, how you adjust will vary depending on why it's happening. So, another source of confidence is knowing what to expect on test day. So know what to expect for each part of the test, right? So students who just go for it, they often are surprised by actually how challenging it is. So please, it's important that we know what to expect. And hopefully we've got some really good strategies for each part of the test. Know that the test room workers, the invigilators, they may ask you to be quiet. They'll point to a sign. I remember the last time I took the test, they went, shh, be quiet, right? I was too loud, and it's okay. Don't let this stress you out and overwhelm you. I know I felt a little bit anxious, right, when that happened, but it's okay. Just lower your voice and continue on. Also, know that you don't have time to go to the bathroom during the test. So maybe reduce how much water you drink before the test and make sure you do use the washroom before. Know that you can't bring in any food or drink. I know that this does depend on the test center. So some students said, yes, I did. I had a water bottle with me. But I know that most do not allow food or drink because you're working on a computer, right? They don't want to risk any damage there. So don't bring in any food or drink, or know that you can't actually. And know that for listening and reading, there may be an extra part of the test that you'll have to do. You won't know which one is marked or unmarked, and it's totally normal. So don't get overwhelmed or stressed if there is an extra test part. And lastly, do plenty of practice with feedback beforehand to build confidence. Again, the more you practice, the more confident you will feel. So one way during the test that you can boost confidence is this is what we call a power pose. So you raise your arms straight up and you take a deep breath in, and then you exhale out slowly. And the good thing is no one will notice or think you look crazy because it'll just look like you're stretching, right? And this is something that we just do naturally. So for example, you'll see somebody when they finish a race, they just go like this. And that's because it's a pose of pride. So when we do this on test day, we'll get this rush of endorphins that make us feel proud and confident. Next, manage your mind, your storytelling mind. Don't tell yourself this bad story about how you are not going to do well. Instead, because hopefully you've prepared well, you're going to say, I can do this. I've prepared really well, and I deserve to get the score that I want on the test. Remember to distinguish between helpful and unhelpful thoughts. So your helpful thoughts, those are the thoughts that are kind to you, that tell you you're ready, tell you you're prepared. The unhelpful ones are the ones that say, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. So ignore your unhelpful thoughts and practice positive thinking and flexible thinking and cognitive restructuring. So as we spoke about before, the physiological symptoms in our body are the same for stress as they are for thrill, pleasure, and excitement. So they did a study and they had students on test day reframe their thoughts from I'm stressed or I'm nervous to I'm excited. And they had them repeat it 3 times. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited. And the students who did this, who restructured their thoughts, performed better than the students who didn't. So you can use your mind in a positive way to help you do well on test day and feel more confident. Also, keep in mind that different strategies will work at different times for different people. So practice is important. It's important that you find the correct strategies for you that help you build confidence on test day. Okay, and if you are looking for more ways to practice, you can check out Prof Prep YouTube, Instagram, my online courses, and you can also take private classes with me. So just go to www.profprep.ca, or you can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, anything like that. And now I would like to leave it up to you guys to ask some questions.
Hi. We actually have some questions. we have one question that was already asked.
Okay.
I will share. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I will read it out loud, but I will also share it on the screen, so you should be able to see it.
Okay.
Um, while practicing, I always run out of time, and this makes me get questions wrong, especially reading part three. But when I pause it and take my time, I get it correctly. Please, what do I do to work with time?
Okay, so this is a tough one, right? Because we've only got 10 minutes for reading part three. So you need new strategies that will help you reduce the time it takes to do this. So I'm happy that your comprehension is great. So you can do this, but now you need to speed up. So the strategies for different students will be different, but I suggest you go to the statements first, read each statement, take a mental note. What is each statement asking? And then you go and you read half paragraph by half paragraph. Usually there's two statements per each paragraph, right? Usually, not always. So what you're going to try and do is cut each paragraph in half and try and match it to one of the statements. It's going to be hard, of course, but I'm glad that the comprehension is there. Now you need strategies for doing it more quickly. Oh, no, I can't hear you again.
Oh, sorry, no, I was mute. I was
Okay.
muted. I have another question here. So some questions we received when we promoted this on Instagram, a few people reached out saying that they won't be able to join us live, but they did have questions for you, so they can like hear the response later when they do come back and watch this video. So here they are.
Okay.
What are some tips to manage stress and anxiety during the test? Are there any remedies we can try the day before the test?
Yeah, so my student yesterday told me a really good one, and it's called tapping. So when she feels stressed out during the test, she just taps right here, or you can tap right here, wherever it feels good for you, because it kind of like, I don't know the the scientific thing, but she said it distracts your mind from the stress. So tapping
Oh,
is one that she's been working on, and she said it's really helpful for her. Another one is breathing techniques. So one that I really like is the 5-finger breathing technique. So you breathe in as you go up, so and then out as you go down.
oh, wow.
And it can really help. So just different breathing techniques can slow you down. And the reason why breathing is so helpful when it comes to stress, because like I mentioned before with the cavemen, it's a physiological reaction. So what happens is actually a part of your brain almost like shuts off. So
Mm,
to turn that part of your brain back on, breathing is what does it. Deep breaths, and it'll turn you back on and turn your brain back on and put you back in the moment.
great. That's actually these are tips that I can use even if I'm not taking the test. So like if you have a work presentation or if you have to talk on stage, I think these are really, really good tips for
I
stress in general.
totally.
Okay, here's another question. I know that each test taker is different, but how much prep time would you recommend for a first-time test taker?
Yeah, so I'd say a minimum of 4 weeks,
Mm,
and that's if your English is at the same level as what you would like to achieve on test day. 4 weeks, it's not an easy test at all. So it takes time to prepare and prepare well. However, if you are maybe intermediate speaker and you want to get, a 10, which a lot of people want right now, it takes like 200 hours of class time to go from a lower level to like a higher level, right? To go from B1 to C1. So you
mhm.
need to be very realistic about how much time it'll take.
Yes, and it's also like a segue from like the point you were talking about. Like I've never heard that before, people booking multiple tests in a row.
Yeah.
That's something I learned new today. I did not know that people were doing that. But yeah, you, maybe like instead of taking so many tests, it would be great if you could take that time to prepare.
I
Um,
had a student reach out to me who took the test 20 times. She's taken the
oh,
test 20 times. And I did the math. I was like, I think that's like over $6,000. Like, that is so much money. And I told her, I said, listen, your money would have been much better spent on taking general English lessons to improve your English to the score that you want. Just taking the test over and over and over again, it doesn't work.
yes, of course.
Yeah.
With most tests, I mean that's
You,
the like that's the test is there so you can improve your skill. Okay, I have a question for you, and I think this is also a question that Yusuf is asking. So you brought up a great point when you talked about noise levels during the test, as things you cannot control. What are some ways to combat the distraction caused by noise?
Yeah. So, what I tell my students to do if they're very easily distracted is to practice that test pressure. Go study at a cafe because
Mm,
that's going to be louder than the test center, right? So, if you can do it there under that kind of distractions, you can do it in the test center on test day. So go practice at a cafe or go put your TV on in the background. I'm not saying to always study like this, but it'll help you overcome those distractions. And when should you book the test? Book the test when every single time you do practice, you're getting the score that you need. That's a good indication that you're ready.
that's a great point. Thank you so much. We have another question here. What can you say about using idiomatic expressions during the speaking and writing sections?
Yeah, so most of the time when students use idiomatic expressions, they've memorized them and they're just trying to throw them out there whenever they can. This can sound really unnatural and awkward because what CELPIP wants from you is to sound really natural, right? However, idiomatic expressions, of course, native speakers use them all the time, but we have to ensure that when we learn them, we're learning to use them correctly and accurately. Instead of always focusing on idioms, what I suggest instead is to focus on using phrasal verbs. So that's when we put a verb and a preposition together, like, you know, pick up or put down. We use these all the time. Or using what we call collocations. So these are the words that go together naturally in English. So, for example, we can host a party, throw a party, something like this, but we don't do a party. So these are the words that actually make you sound more natural.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I also had a question for you. You brought up a really good point when you were talking about overestimating ability. And we often see that with native English testing, native speakers who need to take the test. And I would love to hear like what advice you could give them to like circumvent this fake confidence as you mentioned.
Yeah, so of course, native English speakers, they see that it's an English test, so they assume that they're going to pass the test with flying colors. That means have absolutely no problem and, get a 12 in everything. But this doesn't always happen. There's numerous reasons why students may struggle on certain parts of the test. Maybe they struggle with concentration and it's really hard for them to focus while listening and reading. So that's something that they're going to have to work on and overcome. Every student is different. There's no one size fits all, but usually it's when they were younger or maybe they haven't attended school in a really long time, so they forget some of those comprehension strategies that they used in the past. So it's having to relearn strategies for reading and for listening usually. And for writing, oftentimes when native speakers struggle with writing, it's because they're trying to sound very advanced or very academic. They're trying to show off, perhaps,
That's a good point.
or or maybe they're not taking it as seriously as they should, and they've only written 50 words because they haven't actually followed the instructions. There's so many things that could happen.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kiera. Those are our questions for the day, at least as it relates to our presentation. Feel free to ask us questions in the comments if you're not watching this live, and either sub team or Kiera can definitely try answering them for you. We will also include all of Kiera's links in our description, so you can connect with her later if you'd like to work with her. But thank you so much, Kiera, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Okay, so that was our episode today. Feel free to ask us any other questions you have in the comments regarding confidence or just the CELPIP test in general. And most questions you have, if you have questions about like IDs or prep or what you should bring on test today, you can find that on our website as well, www.celpip.ca. Or you can also reach out to us on any of our social accounts if you'd like to get a more like immediate answer. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I haven't forgotten the trivia question. Which Canadian favorite sport is played on ice with brooms? Of course, the answer is curling. Okay, I'm really excited because this is an answer I knew, but nobody has shared it here. But yes, curling is a very interesting sport that is played on brooms. Okay, I want to address this comment. In listening part 5, which involves 3 persons, the listening mock test 2025 on YouTube uses AI generated video instead of real humans on screen. Do I expect that on test day 2 as a first timer? Can you please share the link of the mock test that you're referring to so we can look through it and provide you with a correct response, because I'm not able to recollect that off the top of my head. And I would also, in case this is a mock test by some other YouTuber or from another source that's not the official test, I would encourage you to refrain from using those sources. If you are looking for practice tests and practice sources that are outside of the official CELPIP website, please go through our prep providers or prep programs that are listed and licensed, that are certified by us on our website. When I say certified by us, it means that CELPIP and the prep provider have gone through training to make sure that they follow certain rules and regulations as required by the CELPIP test, to be able to prepare you for the test. So please do try to use like certified sources and official sources, because we unfortunately cannot validate the authenticity of mock tests or practice tests that you're finding out in the wild, so to speak, on websites that are not affiliated with us. So if you are using something and you're unsure of them, please check our website. Come reach out to us on our social media accounts, or reach out to us via email. We only have one, like celpip.ca or celpip.au is our official website, and most of the content that we want to share with you will be on that website. There are no other sources or external websites where we provide CELPIP prep. Yes, so please do consider that as we get into this era of AI videos and AI prep. I'm not saying that they're all inauthentic, but they're definitely not certified by us. So unfortunately, we cannot guarantee that they will help you. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.